All right, let's dive in. We're tackling global trade this time, specifically, President-elect Trump's tariffs and their potential impact on all things coming in from China.
Big topic.
Yeah, it is. We've got this really interesting Reuters article, and it's showing like this huge surge in imports from China toward the end of 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, our business is getting ready for like a full-on trade war. And what's that going to mean for, you know, us average shoppers? That's what we want to find out today.
It's a little like almost like watching a chess match play out in real time
Okay.
with these businesses trying to, predict that next move and avoid getting caught in the crossfire.
Right, right. So let's lay it out. These proposed tariffs, they're serious.
Yeah.
10% to 60% increase on goods from China.
Yeah.
And it's not just parts this time. We're talking finished products hitting our shelves.
And that makes a big difference, right? Those earlier tariffs, they were focused on disrupting supply chains, maybe encouraging more things to be made here in the U.S. But when you target finished goods, well, that hits consumers right in the wallet, and it might make China, kind of push back harder.
Makes sense. And looking back at December, the numbers are really painting a picture. 14.5% year-over-year increase in Chinese goods coming into U.S. ports. It's like picturing almost 500,000 of those big 40-foot containers being unloaded. It's a ton of stuff.
It definitely shows you businesses are taking this threat seriously. I mean, they're building up their inventory, that safety stock to kind of soften the blow if and when these tariffs actually happen.
So it's like stocking up on all your favorite snacks before the price goes up, but on like a worldwide scale.
Exactly. Except instead of chips and candy, we're talking, everything. Bedding, toys to big machinery, electronics. I mean, think about that new phone you got or that comfy chair. There's a good chance they were part of this whole import rush.
Oh, wow. So this whole rush to import, is it all about avoiding those tariffs, or are there other things going on?
Avoiding the tariffs is definitely a big part of it, but it's not the whole story. American shoppers are still out there buying, which means businesses got to keep the shelves stocked. That demand is a major factor in all of this.
Yeah, that's interesting because on one hand, we've got this like potential trade war looming, but on the other hand, you have consumers just, shopping like nothing's going to change. It's like they're saying trade war. What trade war?
Well, I think it does say something about the confidence in the U.S. economy, right? Even with all this uncertainty. But it does make predicting the outcome of this whole thing even more complicated.
So we've got businesses stocking up, we've got strong consumer demand. Anything else adding to this, frenzy?
Well, we can't forget about those supply chain hiccups we've seen lately. Like those Houthi attacks around the Suez Canal, those really mess things up. Delays, costs going way up. And then, of course, the labor disputes at U.S. ports, those didn't help either.
And for those who don't, follow the whole Suez thing closely, that canal is like a super highway for global trade. You block it even for a little bit, and it creates chaos. Shipping costs go crazy, goods get stuck. It throws everyone off.
Absolutely. And it really shows how fragile those global supply chains are. Something happens way over there, and it impacts businesses and shoppers here.
So it's like businesses are thinking, hey, things are already kind of crazy, and now we might have a trade war on top of it. Better stock up just in case.
Exactly. They're trying to create that cushion, make sure they can meet the demand, even if things get even more unpredictable. It's about stability, right?
Yeah.
Trying to find some stability in a world that's feeling pretty shaky right now.
It's a mix of like fear and confidence fueling all of this. It's kind of hard to figure out where it will all land.
It really is. It's economics, politics, even psychology, all mixed up. And the big question is, what about prices for us regular folks? Will we be shelling out more for toys, furniture, everything? That's something we'll unpack in the next part of our deep dive.
We've been talking about all this stuff coming in from China, but is it like random stuff? Or are there certain things driving this whole import surge?
It's definitely not random. If you look at the data, you see some clear patterns. There's a big jump in what they call durable goods. So, furniture, appliances, electronics, the things you expect to, last a while.
So that new fridge I've been wanting, or maybe a fancy espresso machine, those could be caught up in all of this.
Yeah, it's possible. It makes sense when you think about it. Those are usually big purchases. If you're worried about prices going up, well, might as well buy it now before it costs even more, right?
It's that buy now, save later idea, but like supersized.
Exactly. And that thinking is a big part of what businesses are doing too. If they think people are going to rush to buy stuff, they got to make sure they have enough to sell, hence the import surge.
But it's not just those big purchases, right? The article also talked about clothes, textiles, even toys.
Right. It's a pretty broad range of stuff, not just the big ticket items. And this is where things get a little, I don't know, psychological maybe? Remember when the pandemic first hit and store shelves were empty, all those shortages and delays?
Yeah, it's like that scene from the movie, where toilet paper suddenly becomes like gold.
It's a powerful reminder of how vulnerable we can feel when things we depend on suddenly disappear, right?
Hmm.
I think those memories are playing a part in how people are shopping now. There's that feeling of, better get it while I can, just in case.
So we've got economic fears, like those potential price hikes, mixed with that almost primal fear of scarcity, all adding to this import frenzy.
Exactly. It creates this feedback loop. Consumers buy more, businesses import more, which makes those fears even worse, leading to more buying, you see. It's an interesting dynamic.
So we got this perfect storm, right? Businesses avoiding tariffs, consumers stocking up, that fear of scarcity.
Yeah.
But what happens when the storm's over? What are the, I don't know, the after effects of all of this?
Ah, that's the big question. And like we've been saying, it's hard to predict. It depends on so many things, how those tariffs actually happen, what businesses do, and most importantly, how consumers react.
So we're all kind of holding our breath, waiting to see what happens. But let's try to, play this out a bit. What are some possibilities?
Well, one scenario is the tariffs do happen, those costs get passed on to us, prices go up, but if people start buying less, then businesses might end up with too much stuff.
So they overstocked, thinking a trade war was coming, and it didn't, or at least not as bad as they thought.
Exactly. And that could lead to those price wars, big discounts, lots of deals for shoppers.
So it's a gamble for businesses, right? Too much, and they're stuck with stuff they can't sell.
No.
Not enough, and they miss out on sales or pay those big tariffs.
It's about finding that balance, and that's what makes all of this so fascinating. It shows how connected the global economy really is, you know? One little thing changes, and it impacts everything else.
Like a giant game of Jenga, pull the wrong piece, and the whole tower could fall apart.
That's a good way to put it. And it's not just economics either. There's the political side of things, too.
Oh yeah, we can't forget about China. How are they going to respond to all of this?
Well, if history tells us anything, they're not going to sit back and do nothing. They'll probably hit back with their own tariffs on U.S. goods.
So instead of dodging the bullet, we're walking right into the line of fire. And it's not just higher prices for us either, right? American businesses selling stuff to China, they could get hurt too.
Exactly. It's a complicated web, all these relationships and dependencies. That's what makes predicting what's going to happen so tough. There are just so many moving pieces.
Like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded.
Something like that. But even though we can't predict the future, exactly, we can still look at what's happening, understand the risks and opportunities, and try to make smart decisions based on the information we have.
So it's less about knowing for sure and more about, I don't know, understanding the forces at play and being ready for different possibilities.
Exactly. And that's where, good analysis and careful discussion come in. We got to look beyond the headlines and sound bites and really, dig into the complexity of what's going on.
So let's do that. In the last part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of those potential scenarios and what they could mean for everyone involved. Businesses, consumers, the whole global economy. Stay with us.
Okay, so we spent this whole deep dive talking about this massive wave of imports from China, businesses trying to stay ahead of those tariffs, consumers maybe stocking up, those global supply chain issues we've seen. But what's the bottom line here? What are the possible outcomes of all of this?
That is the question, right? The big one. And like we said, there's no magic 8-ball to tell us for sure. But we can kind of look back, see how tariffs have worked, in the past and get some hints about what might happen.
All right, so history lesson time. What have we learned from those past tariff situations? Well, tariffs, they're basically taxes, right? Taxes on things we import.
Yeah.
And like any tax, it makes those things more expensive. And usually that extra cost, it ends up getting passed on to, the people buying stuff. So that new TV you've been thinking about, if it's coming from China and those tariffs hit, well, get ready to pay more for it.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. My wallet's already kind of hurting from the holidays. But is it really that simple? Like everything just gets more expensive?
It's almost never that simple, right? You got to think about how people will react. If prices go up too much, maybe they'll start buying less, or maybe they'll switch to something cheaper. Remember a few years back when the price of beef went way up? People started buying more chicken.
Right. And I bet some people, stocked up on beef before the price jumped up.
Yeah.
So are businesses kind of banking on that now? That we'll just, I don't know, accept those higher prices, at least for a while?
It's a gamble, that's for sure. They're hoping to find that sweet spot, enough imports to meet the demand, but not so much that they're stuck with tons of stuff if people just don't buy it.
Mm. And what about the big picture, the whole economy? Keep hearing people talking about a possible trade war. Is that something we should actually be worried about?
It's definitely a possibility. China isn't going to just sit there and take it, right? If we
Okay.
slap tariffs on their stuff, they're going to hit back with tariffs on our stuff.
So imagine, like, American farmers, they suddenly got to pay more to sell their soybeans to China, or tech companies trying to sell their gadgets over there. Everyone loses, right?
Exactly. It's like, two boxers just pounding on each other. No one wins a trade war. It messes up global trade, slows down economies. It hurts everyone involved.
Okay, so we've got possible price hikes for consumers, uncertainty for businesses, and then this whole trade war looming over everything. Sounds a little, I don't know, bleak. Is there any good news here? Any upside?
Well, there's always opportunity, even when things are uncertain, right? This whole situation, it might push some companies to, change things up, not rely so much on China. Maybe we'll see more stuff being made here in the U.S. again.
So instead of putting all our eggs in one basket, we spread them out a bit, make things a little more stable. That sounds like a good thing.
It could be, definitely. We'd be less vulnerable to problems in, any one place. Plus, more jobs here, more economic activity. It's not all bad.
So it's not all doom and gloom, some potential good mixed in with the bad. But the biggest takeaway seems to be, like, uncertainty. We just don't know for sure what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the truth. And it's something we all need to, keep in mind as consumers. Don't panic, but be aware. Watch how those trade policies develop, how businesses are protecting, what's happening with prices.
So maybe think twice before buying that new gizmo or rushing to, decorate that guest room. Maybe a little patience will pay off in the long run.
That's smart thinking. And remember, the more you know about all of this, the better you'll be able to handle all these ups and downs in the economy. Knowledge is power, right?
Great advice. So to all our listeners out there, stay informed, stay curious, and thanks for joining us for another deep dive.